you teach so much. What are some of these things that you feel like you have to, you've said time and time again, but really would like to impart to a large audience, like about, some lessons about that aspect of playing?
Well, man, I'm so glad you asked me that question. In the last, and I don't want to sound like, oh, as I've been teaching throughout the last 2 years, I've noticed this. But there's some things that I'm noticing that as I've taught, and I've been, particularly the last 2.5 years as I've traveled the world, I've met a lot of drummers, and when drummers come up to me, I try to, like, even if I can't teach them a lesson, I try to, like, entertain whatever they want, and they all are asking the same questions. So the first thing I want to say is I think it's really important that if you are a drummer and you are a drummer in jazz music, you need to become intimate with the metronome. I'm hearing that a lot of drummers are having certain issues with bands and on the bandstand because they just don't practice with the metronome, right? Another thing I feel that is a technical issue, and you can tie this to the brushes or swing or whatever, we aren't recording ourselves enough. I feel that a lot of drummers in particular, we are the heartbeat of the band. And if we don't know what we sound like and how we are gelling, then how do we know what we can bring to the table? And I find that a lot of drummers that I'm meeting now are we're not self-aware, like, of what our issues are. Like, I could sit here, and if we did like an analysis of Ulysses Owens is playing, I can tell you all the shit that's wrong with my playing. Like, I can tell you all the deficiencies, the things that have been wrong, the things that I fixed, the things that I'm still working on fixing. And then I can tell you the things that even though I need to fix some things that people love about my playing anyway, like, I am very self-aware. And I think that a lot of musicians aren't self-aware. The other thing that I think we need that's missing is we're not really studying anything anymore. We are grazing over a lot of shit these days. Like, we're literally, like, listening. And when I call out these names, I want these bands and these people to know that I love their music. So I'm not attacking them. I'm just attacking how people utilize their music. So you'll have a student who doesn't even know how to play a ride cymbal pattern, and they start their morning listening to Snarky Puppy. Then by, lunch, they're listening to Robert Glasper. Then they're checking out, Mark Collenberg. Then they're checking out Mark Juliana. Then they're ending the day with Esperanza Spalding. Then they're going to end the night with, one of your new records. Now, here's the thing. All of those records are great and all those artists are great, but all of those artists, you included, have gone through a process of studying. And I find that not enough students right now are becoming myopic about studying. Man, when I first came to jazz, at 16 years old, I met John Riley. And John Riley said to me, "You are an incredibly talented student, but you don't sound like a jazz drummer." And I said, "Well, I know that. I've been playing in church." He said, "That's great, man. And I think gospel music is amazing." He said, "But if you want to get into my program, you need to sound like a jazz drummer." And every time I see John, he almost is sick of me now, because I give him the biggest hug and I give him the biggest smile, and I thank him because he was honest with me. So I left his office. I flew back to Jacksonville. I bought Miles Davis Milestones as he recommended it. I then listened to almost everything Philly Joe recorded. Then I went through everything Jimmy Cobb, then everything Elvin Jones, everything Art Taylor, everything I threw out all my hip hop records that I've been checking out, and I focused on learning jazz from the ages of 16 to probably about 23. So I literally stopped I halted whatever my daily or pedestrian listening experience was, and I studied jazz. And as a result of it, now you're sitting on the call with me saying, "Ulysses, we love you and we want to know about you." It's not because I'm great. It's because I stopped my life and I pursued this thing and I was relentless about it. And so I think the last thing I want to say is, I think anybody that wants to be great at something, you have to be relentless. And so I think that's the missing thing, because we're getting access to even like a group like Snarky Puppy. Those guys didn't arrive at that overnight. Those guys have been honing that concept, which is why they're like changing the world. You know what I mean? Yeah. Same with Robert Glasper. I mean, I knew Robert Glasper when he was a student at New School, and there was a club in Brooklyn called the Upover Jazz Cafe. And Rob would literally go to Upover Jazz Cafe. And I remember hearing about, like, every night he would be doing these jam sessions, refining his concept. And again, now he's changing the world. So anyway, I say all that to say, those are the few things that I think that people have to really check out, is like really making sure that they're studying and really like engrossing themselves in what it is. But just those basic things, checking out the metronome, and really being self-aware. So anyway, I know I went off on a tangent, but those are some things.
No, I mean, I think I'm noticing that as a trend. Even, I mean, again, going back to what I said earlier about certain technologies. I mean, I think social media, the way that we're engaging with that technology, doesn't incentivize depth. It incentivizes. I mean, you're presented every cat doing something amazing or demonstrating their best often, and then you just like see 100 of that in 10 minutes. So you're just like, and I noticed this even, you know, it's like hard for myself as a musician to be like, oh, that's sick, I should go check that out. Oh, that's sick, I should try that in my instrument. By the end of the day, you've maybe dabbled on all of those concepts, but it could take it could take months to hone one of those skills, but it's not incentivizing us. So I think maybe to what you were saying, I definitely could understand how that's a trend you're seeing.
And as a result of it, it's affecting how we learn, because now what's happening is people are learning enough to show something,
but not to know it.
So it's like, okay, Ulysses, thanks so much. Like, oh, actually, can I videotape like you showing me this thing, so that, you know what I mean? Like, can I record it? And can, okay, Ulysses, can you get up? Is this the right way? So if I practice this for 3 more days, I'm good. You know, now everything is, how can we make sure we can get a picture of it? And here's the thing, I'm down for that too. I mean, you know, I got my weekly lesson series or whatever, but at the end of the day, everything that I'm talking about in my lesson series is something I have spent years studying. You know what I mean? And so I'm just literally putting it on video, but I've been studying it for many years. So I think that is what's really missing. And so whatever it is that we decide to pursue, I think if we can bring those points to it, I think it would raise the level of musicianship overall. You know?
Yeah. Well, I do want to talk more on the technical side. You know, I saw some of the videos where you were, 2 things. One, I want to talk about brushes, because you also have a mention. And 2, you were talking about in some of the videos a couple essential fundamentals where, I mean, and probably things you get asked a lot too. So let's start with that. You talked about playing fast in one of these videos in the studio, and I'm sure that's a common topic. But I think there's one element where you talk about breathing that is not talked about, and even I was like, oh, hey, you know, I mean, for pianists, it's more about and you talk about this, about being relaxed, and actually the lighter we are, the more it flows. But I wanted you to talk about, could you talk about breath with playing fast? Or
well, I mean, just so you know, a little caveat, every topic that I do on my lessons or approach is something someone wrote to me to do. So that's a really important thing. And I can't tell you, the most questions I've been asked is about playing fast. And I always say, to your point, breathing is the, first of all, if we don't breathe, we can't, you know, live, right? But for those of us that are rhythm section players, when breath is not a direct thing that we have to do, we kind of remove it, and not understanding we have to connect our breath to every phrase. So for me, playing fast, what I would literally do was I would literally, like, you know, put the metronome on, let's say 100, you know, so you're like ding, ding, da, ding, ding. So if I'm doing that, I start taking conscious breath. So I started practicing breathing at the beginning of each phrase. Now, that's not what I do in real time, but I needed to kind of go overboard and make sure that I was tuned in to what I was doing with breath. And when I started becoming conscious of my breath, I realized that I was literally holding my breath. And so when, like, especially when we were playing really fast with, like, in those McBride years, when I needed to not like drop a stick, I would take nice, big, deep breaths, and it would literally just send energy to my limbs, and then I would be cool. You know what I mean? So I think that breath is really important. And I have to say, it sounds cliche, but what you learn to play slow, you can learn to play fast. So I would say to drummers or anybody trying to learn to play fast, pick a tempo, right? So you may say, okay, ding, ding, da, ding, 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 da, ding. A little faster. Ding, ding, da, ding, ding, da, ding, ding, da, ding. You know, and go, and what'll happen is every time, you know, and I'm dealing with torso, I'm dealing with chest, all that diaphragm, I'm shifting, I'm dealing with posture, seat height, all of that. As you go faster, adjust that breath, and the breath will literally send you into the next phrase, right? So you don't want to get to the point where you're like, 1, 2, 3, 4. And, you know, like you don't want to do that, but more so I try to breathe kind of over the phrases and I just try to be aware of it. So I think that most people, when I'm in lessons and we're working on playing fast, the first thing they're not doing is breathing. And the other thing they're not doing is or I should say they are doing, they're holding a lot of tension here, right? So even as a pianist, if everything is here as opposed to relaxing that check, you know, right?
Like, you know,
So that's a big thing for me is the posture and the breath. And the other thing is just being really relaxed. I found that the more relaxed that I was, like really being like, all right, 1, 2, ding, ding, ding. I'm like sitting at a dinner table and I'm playing probably 260.
Yeah.
So I had to start kind of relaxing my energy. So yeah, those are just some tips for me. Another thing, and not to get too philosophical, yoga is really a big thing. And meditation is a big thing for me, because what meditation did was it kind of tuned me into my body and into my breath. And I think the more you meditate and understand what your breath is doing or how you're utilizing it or not utilizing it, then you understand how to send the breath to where you need to go. So for those struggling playing fast, I would really, you know, just sit in the middle of a floor, you know, whether it's Indian style or whatever, and just tune into your breath and tune into your body. And then when you tune into that, then, okay, what are my limbs doing? Well, how do my limbs react when I hold my breath for 10 seconds? And then I think once you understand that, then you can create kind of a sort of a practicum with your breath that works for whatever it is you need to accomplish technically. Does that make sense?
Totally. I mean, I think especially in jazz, the focus is so cerebral all the time about what we're playing, but the connection to the physical is often totally neglected. And you know, you're talking about playing fast, and I'm having flashbacks at any moment. You know, they're calling something a little fast in the moment.
Yeah.
What does our body immediately do?
Our body wants to clench up. So
Anxiety,
already when you're like, you know, when a cat is like 1, 2, we're like, oh shit. You know? Versus what I do now, somebody's like 1, 2, I'm like, So I breathe into the first beat. So already I'm starting this race with a nice big breath.
100%. And I think that being more in tune with how your body responds in those moments, and then practicing the control. Because I understand what you're saying. You're not emphasizing it like that's what you'll actually do, but you need to bring it to the conscious mind, the forefront, to first get control of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell a very, very quick story. I would watch, like, I never forget, and I use McBride because for me, he was like the pinnacle to be able to work with. And I remember, like, I would watch him sometimes, like on bandstand, he'd be playing like all this stuff, you know, in a solo. And then, like, he just stopped. Like, he'd be like, he would just take a break. You know, he would just take a break
and then play the bluesiest thing right after.
You know, and so that I started doing that. I was like, oh man, like I started playing with space. So I think to your point, what will help us play fast, one is space and breath. And also I would say, just to get a little bit more technical, which I know you were saying you wanted, we need to lock into a consistent pattern. So as a drummer, you need to really lock into that spang-a-lang, right? So really figure out how to make that ding, 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 like really getting that right up tempo before you even start varying the beat, before you start doing, you know, ding, 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 ding. Like before you get to all of that, let's just get the basic ride cymbal pattern locked in. Let's make sure the hi-hat is on 2 and 4. Let's make sure if you're going to feather or not, that's identified. Make sure our comping is hooked up. So now we're together. Same for you. Okay, make sure that left hand is identified. You know, how are you going to comp? You know, what are your voicings going to be? So then when we understand what we're going to do or what we're going to use, and then we apply the breath and space and relaxed meditative energy to all of that, then it's like, all right, now we know where to go.